There it was, right there.
Chills down your spine.
This thing was big.
Is Bigfoot out there? This expert team of true believers fans out across America
Sasquatches do exist.
and uncovers evidence
These are the best prints I've seen in my life.
of this elusive legend.
Was that you?
I do think there's a Squatch in these woods.
Finding Bigfoot. New season Sunday, November 11th. Animal Planet. Surprisingly human.
So I think this question would be for you, Matt, is often groups like the BFRO are put together and funded entirely by people who are kind of, their interest in Bigfoot transcends recreation, but seldom, if ever, has government-funded research been conducted. So
Not in this country.
Right,
in
right,
China.
right. Yeah, I understand you've
And
been
Vietnam.
working with foreign governments, yeah. So why, in your estimation, for both of you actually, is the government willing to fund the investigation of, say, like extraterrestrial life in the solar system, but not necessarily strange phenomena that's purported to be walking on Earth?
I'd say because, say, you're funding like the SETI project or something, you start off with, I think they're starting off with an acceptance that they might get nothing. And it's still a good scientific exercise. They'll put together these radio telescopes, they'll be able to bring people in, they can put people to work, and they know the humanity, all of humanity around the world, is seriously interested in whether or not there's extraterrestrial life. And it seems more plausible, I think, to the general public, and that there could be life out there, and they don't mind money being spent to look for it. But in the Bigfoot subject, they're not going to put, money doesn't get put into it unless they think they have a reasonably good chance for success. Even though it is a good exercise.
It's a lot about critical mass. The number of people who believe probably in the possibility of extraterrestrial life is considerably higher than the number of people generally that believe in Bigfoot, because of, in the past, that media perception and the cynicism attached to it really alienated government and academia for seriously looking at the possibility of Bigfoot. And I think that has persisted for a long time, and only recently is that really starting to change. And I think Finding Bigfoot brings that awareness forward, because you just can't write everything off. You know, of course there's anecdotal witnesses that had misidentification or saw something else, or some people are making a story up, or people were hoaxed. But there still are credible witnesses that have these unbelievable stories that we have no explanation for. We can't write it off as pareidolia, anything. The footprints, the vocalizations, DNA studies, upcoming DNA studies, that for me as a scientist saying, I want Bigfoot to be real. For me, I haven't seen the evidence that proves it for myself personally, but we have scientists in the community who are saying, I've reviewed this evidence, to me Bigfoot is real, and they're way ahead of the field, they're the pioneers. I want it for the rest of academia to, instead of just rolling their eyes and falling back to that belief system, to say, let's work together and actually investigate it. And that's the step that is needed to be forward-thinking, like, say, Vietnam, like, say, China, those countries, because there's just this knee-jerk reaction to just be like, it's Bigfoot. Yeah, use that Walmart.
Right. So, I mean, the thing is, as far as the DNA goes, do you think that's the key component to saying, finally, look, this is what it is, we got DNA, enough of it, we have the proof, this is it. You could get all the video you want, but you could get video UFOs and people, hey, that's garbage.
It depends on the quality of the video too. If you have daylight, close range, you're seeing them move around, it's extended video. I think culturally, just like your average person, that'll have more impact than just, because if the DNA results come out, remember, you're going to have one story, maybe two, that's going to be big news stories all around the world one day. And then it might be like on TV, oh, they got DNA, da-da-da-da-da.
Right.
And that may affect the attitude of the scientists who actually hear that story. But it's going to be there and forgotten. People are still going to be like, well, they say they have DNA, but still nobody has caught one. They can't show us a dead one or a live one. So in my mind, I don't care what the DNA says. DNA could be wrong. I do think good video footage, if we can't get a body, really good close-range video footage, I think would be more persuasive to your average person if they could actually see it. Next best thing. Because the average person, DNA, it's just like, remember, it's data. Well, you can't really show DNA.
Right.
You can tell people about DNA results. You show a little graph, charts, numbers. It's not like the thing. You'd still have to rely on other people telling you that, oh, this is what this means.
Yeah.
And it's, not everybody's going to accept that necessarily, but they'll accept something where they can really see it clearly.
I agree, but at the same time, I think, unfortunately, the way technology is with CGI and all these things, I think people are going to see and say that's it's so easy in this day and age to evac. I understand what Matt is saying about the persuasiveness of the general culture saying, look at this, but I think what it will take is that DNA that is truly peer-reviewed, not the Sasquatch Genome Project, which Article 1, Journal 1, Article 1, you can't buy peer review, okay? Unfortunately, that one is a huge letdown for the Bigfoot community, but there is another DNA study. If Bigfoot's real, technology will eventually be able to get evidence to prove it. But at this time, it would, for me, it would take something like DNA, and then that would therefore open up the government to say, we have a bipedal hominid that's moving around this country.
I think you have a separation there.
Then everything would come with it.
I think
and work
separation,
together.
like I know myself, I know maybe Raphael, I'm not speaking for him, but I think that DNA for myself would be the golden key for myself. Because of the videos, I've seen many. And the videos can be CGI.
I was just devastated by the. I was devastated though by the Sasquatch Genome Project because I was waiting back and everybody was asking me as a scientist. I'm like, it's irresponsible to comment on a project I don't have access to.
Okay, now what did you know about that project before you saw the news about it? Okay, then you saw it, and then what did you say what stinks about it? How did you know?
When I seen it, I was just like, I was still skeptical in a little way. I wasn't completely bought on it. But
it appears to be very close to the lens, but yet the duration.
Oh, you're talking about the video.
So yes, the video. Yes, I'm not talking about the DNA. No. But if I got proof of DNA,
because of the media,
if I got proof of DNA, I think for myself, not for everybody, I would take that extra step and say, yes, this is probably it. If that's for me.
Well, unfortunately, this project and the hoaxing of the section of it, I'm not writing the entire project over, but that DNA part, whether that DNA is true or not, because we don't know because it hasn't been peer reviewed. It just, the way that it was done, it just makes you feel, all it gives is the cynics more ammunition.
The lady was a con artist.
Yeah.
And she had a lab, she could do DNA, she's not even a doctor. But that going on, what was happening there is what really was one of the factors that got a real scientist, Dr. Sykes out of Oxford, involved and basically said, nah, send samples here, we'll do the real thing over here in England, oddly enough. Why? Because in North America, so politically risky among scholars and stuff, it's just so controversial. But in England, they're like, where they were used to stories about the Yeti for so many years, the Yetis, they were far more familiar with that. And they started hearing about what was going on here, and they're like, well, if it's true, it's a really big deal, so let's look into it. And it's like, well, duh, why? It's so obvious, such a no-brainer. Why wouldn't it that be here? And if you hear the sort of thing that happens among the halls of academics about how somebody would make a no-brainer statement like that, and then somebody else would be, no, we can't do that because people might make fun of us and laugh at us, as if that's the worst possible fate, worse than hell. And people might tease us.
There's just these preconceived notions in North America currently attached to Sasquatch that is holding academia back. To look at it, one way or another, just to really with as much critical objectivity, which is not possible to do outright, but it's unfortunate that happened. Another DNA study is out. My hope is that it is truly scientifically peer-reviewed.
Do you both suspect that the so-called findings from organizations like the Sasquatch Genome Project, etc., are specifically cherry-picked by media outlets in order to discredit
I think finding Bigfoot, that's one thing we want to do, is raise the awareness to the general public. Are you hearing these types of things? So many of the activities, wood knocks, odd screams, strange things, people are not aware of are attributed to Sasquatch. That's one thing our show can do is raise the awareness of the general public. If you are hearing this, maybe try doing this, try to collect some evidence. We're also trying to raise that awareness to academia, and then by academia, if there's something there, take that next step.
Let me answer your question directly. Yes, they sometimes will cherry pick things that will that will tend to drag down the subject, but they'll cherry pick things again when there's a visual. It's really especially when you're talking about television. there's got to be something visually based.
Right.
Visually based, or something in the newspaper, even newspaper, there's got to be a photograph. As soon as there's something that's compelling visual, it will make news. Unfortunately, that will sometimes involve visuals that are fake. Or some hillbilly saying, yeah, get over the hill. This guy in North Carolina was all over the news. So yes, sometimes, and that used to be a worse problem before, when they would only pick the silliest, dumbest things to talk about.
Yeah, it becomes a representational issue.
Yeah, and over the years, now they've actually started to show things. The silver lining with this Melba thing is here they picked things that, at least on the surface, they didn't know any better, but sounded legit and sounded like it was going to support the subject, and they covered it. And yeah, part of that project was legit, and part of it, the DNA part, was completely bogus. And that's what it does sully the whole thing. But what they had all hoped is there was going to be this great 1-2 punch, that they were going to have DNA results and they were going to have video footage from the same area, from the same location, such that the DNA was obviously something from this thing you see in the video. Right. But they sent it to the only lady who represented herself as a scientist who could do the DNA study, and she was just a shyster. So the DNA, unfortunately, is no good. I know some of the footage from that location is good, because one of the 3 pieces, I've gotten footage of them 3 times. One of the piece of footage I've gotten was from that location. That was got the second piece of video footage out of there, out of Kentucky. So there definitely was. I had them bring in a scientist from Princeton, Leela Hashek, a PhD. She lived there for 4 years and had seen Sasquatches there herself. There was a couple other scientists who went there. So a lot of stuff went on there that was legit. But to connect it, they couldn't sever the ties with the lady who had done the bogus
It's sullied
DNA.
it all. Unfortunately for the general public, it's sullied it all.
And the tragedy was, they gave her all the DNA that samples. They gave it all to her, and part of her little scam was, she was saying, when they'd say, but can we have some of that back so we can send it to another scientist? Oh no, she'd say it was all consumed and part of the analysis, and it was just a scam. But now, again, because of that, there are other scientists who are jumping up, and now the rationale is, well, we want to do it properly.
Yes, and let's do it properly.
Whatever floats your boat.
Right, right.
Let's do it properly.
So hopefully a huge lesson will be learned, and we'll move forward and get some real science done on it.
Yeah, sometimes you got to have a charlatan come in before the real credible people will actually get involved.
Casting aside the associations with that footage with charlatans, let's just say you're presented the footage in and of itself, by itself, with no witnesses.
That particular footage from Kentucky, or footage in general?
Footage in general, actually. How do you determine, what is kind of the tell for a hoax? Is it more of a manipulation of filmic images, or is it like the physiognomy of the creatures?
We see enough videos that we almost become experts on picking out hoaxes, which is, you have to be able to do that. And not only the cast, but we have a production company, then we have a network, and everybody has they've over time though have really immersed themselves in the Bigfoot community. You become good, you start to know what
you
to
see
look
enough
for.
fake stuff, and you can tell after a while. It's just you get good at picking out, at least dividing what's obviously fake from the stuff that might be good. And then the might be good, you'll delve into that, and then it's like, okay, can we talk to the cameraman? Oh, well, the cameraman, I was given this footage anonymously by someone. It's like, bullshit. No one's going to give you footage anonymously for you to give it to the press. So we can put that in the bullshit camp, that we have some stuff left, and then it's like, okay, you're saying you're the cameraman. Can we meet you? Can you take us to the place? Oh, no. It's secret. We can't take you because it's too dangerous.
Oh, that one
it's
killed
like,
me. I'm funny. I'm a bear biologist. I'm a bear biologist. I actually am published on these papers of bears. And it's too dangerous.
Then some will take it all the way and will actually go all the way out there to where they see it, and then it's just like they had told us all these details about what it looked like, and then we get out there and it was like way far away. There's no way you can see any of that detail. And we're like, you saw it comes skin and face and everything, and it was like 300 yards. It's
bullshit.
Like, no, So you get down to those ones. I mean, usually we can pick out all that stuff before we have to start going a goose chase. And then we're left with some where the footage where it's like, if we know that if this looks close enough to a squatch, and we can tell the cameraman, because if it's fake footage, the cameraman is always involved. You don't have just a guy walking around in the woods hoping somebody's going to film him and think it's Bigfoot. That might happen around the edge of like a tourist resort where he knows people, but if you're talking way out in the middle of nowhere, somebody gets footage like that, the cameraman, if he's innocent and there isn't somebody who like brought him there and put him in that position, then it's probably sponge footage, because again, you wouldn't, and that's when we'll go out, we'll do the comparison, you'll see that, oh yeah, and the thing, if we measure it, happened to be about 8 feet tall.
Right.
We're pretty good
So you
at
get
it. We're
close.
pretty darn good at picking out the obvious hoaxes we've got, but we can screen extremely well.
Yeah, even the guys who we totally believe at first when we're just talking and they seem sincere, we get them out there and we've been doing this a long time. And they say, yeah, this is where I got the footage, and we're looking in the background and we see this and we see that. Say, this is really where you got it. Oh, yeah. Well, that mountain slope that comes down there in the footage isn't there. Oh, well, yeah, maybe it isn't really on this part of the river, and then they just start breaking down. They realize that we've busted them, and then they just crack.
But not even witnesses that are lying. Sometimes, people who genuinely believe they saw Bigfoot and they've had video footage and they're going back to do a recreation, they get the distances wrong. There's details that just, if your mind's racing that moment, and we will come back with them and be able to line it up, and they thought they stood 20 yards over there and it was really 20 yards over here. It's just, it's interesting.
We also judge like the people, just their perceptual ability, because sometimes people will, I mean, in the case of footage, you can judge it on its own, but when you're talking about sightings and stuff like that, people have really tried to yank our chain, saying they've got them all around their property, they're here, there, and then we'll meet some of these people, and you can tell they've got serious issues that you couldn't tell by talking to them on the phone.
Extremely rare.
But those are the ones that make the most noise, and they try to get the most attention. So but again, there's so many hoops that we make them jump through. Fakers rarely jump through all of them, but somebody who just had a roadside sighting where they ran in front of their car, they got no trouble taking you back and saying, yeah, we were driving past here, it was the middle of the night, 2 people in the car, both saw it run across the road into the woods. There's nothing to lose by telling that story.
Being from a genre film outlet too, I just wanted to get your take on the fact that we're kind of anticipating at least 3 films that are being made by one of them is Eduardo Sanchez, who did the Blair Witch Project, and some other filmmakers. There's this trend that's on the rise of
but dude, that's
it's been in that state where there was 3 these movies coming out for the past 5 years. We've been anticipating this, and the Talk Slick movie, we hear about them, this project's going on, and then they just don't happen. So I would tend to bet, like, if any of them, there might be 1 out of those 3 that you hear about actually come to fruition, and it'll just be like go straight to DVD or Netflix or something.
They're already out.
I'm not absolutely sure about it, but there's been hearing this for a long time.
Notable names, but I guess hypothetically, I'm just interested in if you guys were to be consultants on a project like that.
I already am.
What would you are.
We have been.
So
we've already been approached.
What is your kind of objective?
I tell them, they ask me if it was real, what would it be? Very often they won't tell me how they're going to portray the Bigfoot, and they're going to make it more horror. I mean, many times I've helped with the project, I've said, no, just make it real, make it more authentic, and then it ends up being more horrifying. If
you're doing a horror film, you're doing a horror film. If you're doing a real film, then I'm here to just raise the awareness and try to keep it as honest as possible.
You guys aren't convinced that they're necessarily dangerous, right?
Oh, they're not. They'll scare the hell out of you, but they don't. They seem to know better than to actually attack. I'd be dead by now. I've been close enough to them a number of times.
But in the moment, can you imagine how terrifying it would be?
Yeah, sure. It's scary. If you're not expecting it would scare you to death.
Massive,
I need to wrap this up.
Okay.
Do you have do you have one more question, or you can always set something up?
Pretty much good. Yeah, I think it covered most of it. I think I had one more. If we have time. It was for Ranae, because I had asked Bobo what he thought the most common misconception about people who purport to know or who believe whatever are shared by skeptics. So as a skeptic coming in initially, what would you say is the most common misconception about skeptics shared by people?
The most common misperception about skeptics?
About skeptics, yeah. That's shared by people who believe or know or whatever.
It depends if they're professional skeptics or not,
Yeah, okay, so what the Bigfoot community looking at me as a skeptic, what do I think
because you're outnumbered on the show, at least in the first season.
I think, for me personally, it's an editing issue. There is a misconception that these guys think everything that's a twig branch is Bigfoot. And for me, that I'm far more, yes, this is the misconception, and then for me, that I am far more believing that I really am. But do you want me to make that more generalized to skeptics?
The it's the misconception that you're cynical and that you're not.
No, I would say on the show the misconception that I have from Finding Bigfoot is that the guys believe that every twig branch in the woods is a squatch, and that they believe everything is a squatch, and that I
believe nothing
and then I am starting to believe much more. I think they portray me on the show to be far more accepting or ready to take the bait than maybe I really am. That's my at least opinion.
Did you do squawk scream to scare them off?
Yeah, the dog. That was they just brought the dogs out as a lark, the handlers, and they're like, these dogs don't lie, and they were shocked at the responses they got from their dogs.
Yeah, it's a really compelling episode. I think that everyone's going to really enjoy it. And you know what? Like Bobo said, dogs don't lie.
No, that's what they said.
Dogs are the best, man.
Well, you just said it a second ago. Man, you have a short memory.
A lot of concussions.
All right.
So I just wanted to ask. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Jay, with Invest Comics, I just wanted to know what is your functions on the show? What do you do? What do you do as far as what's your function? I'm sorry.
Eye candy.
Eye candy. Cool. And what do you guys?
Well, I think it's fair to say that both Bobo and I have been in the game a long time. I've been doing it about 20 years. Bobo's at 25 or 27 or something like that. We bring a lot of experience to the team, basically, because we were Bigfooters long before the show happened, and we will be Bigfooters long after. Specifically, I'm labeled as the evidence analyst.
Right. Yeah, that's what I was looking for. You're the evidence guy, and
they labeled me expert field caller.
Okay. Cool. All right. Yeah. So that's cool. And how long have you been doing that for? How long have you been doing
the show?
Before the show started?
Bigfooting?
Yeah.
I'm at 20 years. I don't know what you're at.
I went out. My first time with my buddies was '84. We were in high school.
Wow. Okay.
So that's 30 years.
Yeah. It's funny because we got full circle. Back then it was just go out, drink a few beers, and scream in the woods. Then we try to get all ninja and commando.
Right.
Now it's fall back around and just go out in the woods and scream and yell.
Cool. So basically, I mean, one of the questions I really wanted to ask was that obviously there's a lot of naysayers out there. I'm sure you face that.
There's a lot of uninformed people that facts are right.
Right. Okay. So what I wanted to know was basically how is it now different with Finding Bigfoot on Animal Planet as opposed to anything before your guys' video, which was awesome, by the way.
I'll just say real quick, I don't know that we've presented a whole lot of really new, compelling evidence, but just introducing solid witnesses that we have a lot of cops. I get stopped by cops all the time. We watch your show because we watch the witnesses because they're trained in lie detection.
Yeah.
And they can't believe how many witnesses you can tell are telling a real life, reliving experience that they had. And they find that the most compelling thing is the average person.
Right.
And people trained in lie deception also, that's what they key in. And the average person has an innate sense of people are bullshitting or not, and so they also go. I was blown. We've had 3 chiefs of police last year or 2 years ago on the show. 3 different chiefs of police came out and said, "I don't care what anyone says. I can pass a lie detector. I'm not lying."
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Well, Cliff, there's more you can talk about evidence.
Yeah, and a lot of people. The problem. I'd say the problem with the public perception of Bigfoots in general is that the public isn't aware of how much evidence there actually is supporting the idea that these things are real. They said, how come people don't see them? Well, you know what? We show these witnesses, and we've spoken to literally thousands since the show has started, and probably thousands before that. People do clearly see them. Well, how come there's no photographs? Well, actually, there are a fair number of photographs. They're not really good, but the nature of the beast here is very difficult. These things are very difficult to photograph under the best circumstances. Well, how come there's not more footprint casts? Well, there's a kind of a lot. There's close to 300 or 400 footprint casts, and on top of that, most of them, the ones that are considered legitimate at least, are internally congruent in morphology and anatomy. It's extreme, whether they were cast in 1962 or 2012. They show the same anatomical features, all of which would be necessary biomechanical redesigns of the foot to carry a mass that large.
Right. And also, you see that same morphology in the Patterson-Gilliam film. It wasn't discovered until just a couple of years ago, but the foot, they have a double-balled foot, and it actually, you see it come up and bend, that there's no, people say, it's a fake foot. Well, someone had to have, their foot fully rebuilt, broke all the bones, put in rods with some kind of hydraulics could lift it, bend it up, reverse, and you see that clearly in the film.
Yeah, they lack a longitudinal arch, which is the arch that runs from front to back of their foot. And by the way, all other species of apes also lack that same feature. Humans are the only species of great ape, that actually has that arch, and that is because we're built for different things than them. They've retained a lot of flexibility in the foot, and as Bobo was saying in the Patterson-Gimlin film, you can see the foot bend in the mid part and lift up. You can also see the heel elongation because the ankle bone has a forward shift of about 12% compared to humans, which actually improves their biomechanics. It takes less energy for them to propel the mass that size. It's fascinating. Yeah, but the problem is that most people aren't aware these things are even out there, and that's why so many people are so skeptical.
Right, exactly. Okay, that makes sense.
So recently, getting to the sense of awareness that you're touching on, because there have been multiple reports covering so-called authentic video footage that was procured by the Sasquatch Genome Project in Dallas. And my first question is, are those footage and finding proof, in your opinion, of the existence of Bigfoot? And to follow that, I would ask, what is your criteria, both of you, for drawing distinctions between what evidence is hoaxed and what is veritable?
Well, there's different photographers on that project. There's the original, hillbilly people that live there that filmed the daylight footage. And that's up in the air. A lot of people think it's fake. But at the nighttime, it was a guy named Dennis Foll, we know real well. Solid, down to earth, just legit guy, smart guy. And he filmed the nighttime stuff. And he swears by it. When you watch it, it looks a lot more real than the stuff you see. It's not as clear, but it's a lot more real. We take it as more legit footage because we know the source, and he's unimpeachable character.
Yeah, you have to, and again, just because it's under the Erickson Project, or now, of course, that's been grouped with Melba's thing and called the Sasquatch Genome Project, which is the DNA part of it. They were, in the beginning, two separate projects, and they just kind of teamed up and went forward. And so there's a lot of different things going on under that one banner name. So you can't just say, is that legit? Unfortunately, you have to look at each individual aspect of it and look, okay, is this particular piece of footage legit? I don't know. Let's talk to the person who shot it. Let's find out the circumstances around it. Let's do that. Let's investigate that one particular piece of footage. Now, the Erickson Project has a dozen or more pieces of footage, and that level of scrutiny needs to be put at every single one of those pieces of footage. And then there's a whole other thing with the DNA. That's it, and I think eventually peer review by other scientists will take care of that.
Yeah, one interesting thing about the daytime sleeping footage, the breathing rate is at the same rate as a gorilla. And these people are very backwoods hillbillies. They're not. They didn't have the internet or anything like that when this all broke. And there's just things like that they wouldn't know, we don't think. And so, but they wouldn't let scientists go and measure the trees where that was. They've hoaxed other things, so we don't really put a whole lot of stock in the daylight footage.
That organization.
Yeah. Well, there's three different photographers.
Well, at least three. a lot of more. There were plenty of people there, and different pieces of footage got taken by different people. And there's also footage in the Erickson Project, from what I hear, at least, from other parts of the country as well. Right. So it's not a very pure sample, unfortunately. Different photographers, different locations, possibly different Bigfoots, possibly different guys in suits. We don't know because they haven't been very forthcoming with their data yet. Yeah. But as soon as it's out, then it's our job to step up and say, okay, let's take a look at this. Could this even be real? Right. Let's take a look at it.
Just getting back to your criteria.
The DNA part of that big study, that woman, if she's competent, she's lying, or she's incompetent, or she's crazy, or whatever it is, but no scientist takes that DNA study. But Brian Sykes at Oxford University, Dr. Sykes, he sequenced the woolly mammoth genome. He's considered the top geneticist in the world for taking old DNA and get it sequenced. He's working on a really promising thing right now, a whole project, looking at Yeti samples from Asia and North American Bigfoot. And he's flown over here a few times, met with witnesses, and flown to the sites. And that's the DNA project, the Sasquatch Genome Project. You could throw that DNA project out the window. But the one coming out of Oxford that's going to be released probably within the year, has to go through peer review. That's going to blow people's minds.
And it is unfortunate because Melba did have 111 samples, and it's very likely that she has a good number of very good samples in there. But the way she released the data to the scientific community
and analyzed it.
Well, I don't know as much about that because I'm not a DNA expert and stuff, and I'm leaving that to the geneticists basically. Right. But the way that she came forward with the data was very discouraging for people like myself who were really hoping that she would do it in a scientifically impeccable way that it was bulletproof. But that's not what happened, unfortunately.
Have you guys ever just sat around and just ventured to guess what would happen, like when the coelacanth does finally show up, when you finally do get a specimen and bring it to the world with all the technology and all the stuff you guys have used to find Bigfoot, but when it's finally found, have you ever just sat around and said, what's going to happen the next day?
More than you can imagine.
Really? I mean, what do you think the general reaction is when you bring the body of Jesus right to somebody and say, look, it's here, now what? What do you think?
Well, it'll be gone in 3 days.
Oh, well, that's a different mythology. But what do you think is going to happen? I mean, what do you think the reaction would be to the general public? Are they going to believe you, or are they going to still doubt?
Dude, if you have a body, what are they going to say?
I don't know. They got Kennedy footage. They still got people saying there's no lone gunman. You're never going to prove it 100%. Doubting Thomases are everywhere. You guys ready for that? Or?
Well, it wouldn't be us. I mean, there's a lot of PhDs involved in this that keep under the radar because people's careers have been thwarted and, kept down, like they haven't been able to progress like they normally would.
Yes,
but there's the RHI, the Relic Hominid Inquiry, is run by Dr. Meldrum out of Idaho State University. He's got 12 PhDs on that board, and there's dozens and dozens more around the country and the world.
Right.
China employs 20 PhDs researching this by the government.
By the way, for the record, it's Relic Hominoid Inquiry, if you're going to write that.
Oh,
just
what did I say? Hominid?
Yeah, just whatever that's.
But like I said, going back to, if it's there in front of you, you're still going to have people say that's so.
Not for long, because that's what everybody's waiting for. Everybody's waiting for a body or a piece of the body, because that's what the academics need to progress forward in this. And really, a DNA sample might prove that this thing is out there, but they're still going to go try to collect a sample, a species, or a specimen rather, which is unfortunate, because I think that perhaps species like Sasquatches perhaps deserve a little bit more compassion than the normal species. Because the stuff that we know now about great apes, I kind of have to wonder, would we even collect a specimen of any of the known great apes now, considering what we've learned about them since when they were collected? The orangutan was collected, I think, in the 1600s or something like that. Lowland gorilla in 1850-51, mountain gorilla in 1901, or 1902 or something like that. And they were thought as monsters and stuff then, but we know so much better now. Sasquatches are at least that amazing. They are at least that smart.
Yeah.
That's why I say at least. They are at least of that level. Perhaps they deserve a little more compassion than the normal species. And what's interesting is that dead specimen that proves a whole species is real is called a holotype.
Okay.
There's 2 species now that have no holotype. One is human beings, because we obviously wouldn't. But there's recently discovered species of monkey, and forgive me, I don't know the name, that has no holotype because they were deemed to be too rare to sacrifice one. Well, I would argue that Sasquatches are too similar to us to sacrifice just one. I think that there's other ways, more compassionate ways, that we can prove the species and learn about them than killing one.
Once there's a holotype, there's going to be so much money thrown at it. Like right now, it's just us running around like basic bare bones thermals, like not sustained efforts. Like we're filming a TV show, we can't stay in the field like we do when we're not working. But even then, like we have to you still got to worry about rent. So
the world gets in your
it's
way.
amateur. Like when there's dedicated research scientists with, there's going to be billions of dollars for it. You're going to have all kinds of people throwing money at this, government, private, research groups, and they'll have the money to put out, hundreds and hundreds of cameras over wherever we know they're at, and start gathering data like how they operate. We know so little. We know they're there. We just don't know what they are.
Okay.
What do you have to say as far as you were saying earlier that you have to prove legitimacy as opposed to being real and not real? Why do you suppose so many people love to throw out their fake UFOs and fake Bigfoot sightings? Why do you suppose that is? Why would anybody do that exactly?
I think
there's hoax people.
I think it's a variety of reasons, honestly. Some people are going after money or attention. I have a lot of people throwing fake stuff just for attention, it seems. They want my attention or somebody else. They want media attention sometimes, but it's usually just attention from individuals, which I think is real weird, I think that, honestly, there's kind of a lot of people who perhaps aren't as, mentally solid as others as well, and it's honest.
And there's other ones that want to I'm going to show how dumb these guys are. I'm going to outsmart them and get those ones like
Duke the expert guys.
Get those guys.
Yeah,
I think there's a variety of reasons. You know, I was called out on a fake line of footprints last year. It was sent right to me. I think I was a target of that. You know, just again, fake the experts and just show that those experts don't know anything.
Right, yeah.
Well, you know what? I'm not an expert. Right. There are no Bigfoot experts. I'm a learner, just like everybody else.
I think you get some debate about there's no Bigfoot experts at that too.
Well, you know, it's the truth, though.
What would you guys say is the most common misconception about believers shared among skeptics?
About the people who believe?
Yes.
We don't wear tinfoil hats for one.
No, we wear trucker hats.
There's tinfoil lining inside, I gotta admit.
Are you guys ready for me to bring Ranae and Matt over?
No.
There's no real experts, we were told. So.
Real quick, we'll finish this question.
Go
ahead.
I think that people who look at people like myself or Bobo, who know that Sasquatches are real, I think that they have a perspective that we're fooling ourselves, that we're just kind of like our heads are in the cloud, we're not down to earth, there's no evidence for this, we're just believers, you know? But you know what? Belief is for religion and politics. Data supports this one. The data is there. These things are real.
What's your preferred moniker then? If not believer, then researcher
knower.
Knower.
That's what I go with.
Knower, learner, researcher, any of those. How about
facts.
Bigfooter?
Right.
Squatcher.
Squatcher.
I just like that better than Bigfoot.
It sounds, Squatcher's got more of a sexy tone to it.
That's what I
Bigfooter looks like some kind of foot disease.
That's what I'm saying.
I like Bigfooter because it's more awkward. It reflects my personality.
This is sort of in keeping what he was saying earlier, but I just wanted to kind of reiterate, because you said, you know, we talked about the social implications of what finding a holotype would be like, but have you imagined what a show in which Bigfoot is already found and known about and known to exist, like irrefutably, what would a show like that
You're going to see dozens. Every network will have at least one or two. Look how many hillbilly shows pop up.
Yeah.
When you got the biggest scientific find of the last 1,000 years, probably, unless aliens land, there's never going to be anything like that happen again, where something that big was right there. I mean, it's so closely related to us, and it's been there the whole time. I think there's gonna be all kinds of there's gonna be a lot of psychologists and PhD students writing papers on what was the psychology of the scientific community to just reject, not even look at that's the problem. They don't look at the evidence because it's kind of a career killer for a lot of people.
What I hope to see is some excellent sort of documentaries, like Discovery Channel style documentaries about them, their natural habitat, their ecology, how they fit into the world, because they do. They're already here. We have a lot to learn.
And they're a good example for humans because they're big feeding mammals that leave very little trace.
Right.
They're a perfect balance with their environment.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. I mean, there's also this cultural wave that seems to be going on now. We're about to get, in the horror community, we're about to get, I think 3 horror films one by Eduardo Sanchez, who did Blair Witch Project, among others, who want to do Bigfoot movies. What would you say, as people who are just looking at hard evidence and truths, what would you advise to people who are taking on this area in fiction?
Some movies have cars coming after you and killing you.
I saw that one.
Perhaps maybe cars aren't as evil and dangerous as they portray.
There it was, right there.
Chills down your spine.
This thing was big.
Is Bigfoot out there? This expert team of true believers fans out across America
Sasquatches do exist
and uncovers evidence
These are the best prints I've seen in my life.
of this elusive legend.
Was that you?
I do think there's a squatch in these woods.
Finding Bigfoot. New season Sunday, November 11th. Animal Planet. Surprisingly human.